Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. It was so great catching up with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, one of the greatest guitarists alive, talking all things Jimi Hendrix, but also talking about his new music and some cool milestones that are coming next year. This aired on Wednesday, October 16th. Here you go. Well, not that we need a reason to celebrate tonight's guest, but it's been a pretty packed year for him. Just a few weeks ago, he released his latest album, Dirt on My Diamonds, Volume 2. And right now, he's near the end of the massive and always unforgettable tour, the Experience Hendrix Tour. Hanging with us tonight is Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny Wayne, thank you so much for hanging, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you've got a little bit of time between the release of Dirt on My Diamonds, Volume 2, and where you're at right now. How's it feel to have this out in the world, man?
Well, it's exciting. You know, I've been waiting for this to come out. I mean, Volume 1 came out back in November, and I had both of them ready at the same time. So, you know, I had to kind of wait several months before we could put out Volume 2. But, you know, it's kind of like doing a double album, except we didn't release them at the same time. We did them like companion pieces. But it is the first time that I have ever released 2 albums of new material in less than 12 months apart. So it's exciting to have the new music out there. This year we were featuring songs in the show from Volume 1. And now that Volume 2 is out, it sets us up nicely for the tour next year, so we can do songs from Volume 2 and keep the band out on the road, entertaining the people, which is what we love to do.
Amen, man. I love hearing that. Yeah, that's got to be a weird feeling because, you know, for a fan, it's like, oh, man, the day that album comes out, that's the first time I'm getting my hands on it. For you, you're like, yeah, I've been ready for this for a while.
Yeah, but what's great about it is that I've had a lot of time to live with the music. Because we actually wrote most of this stuff and started recording it. We didn't finish it, but we started all of this before COVID. And so I've had a lot of time to kind of sit with this music. And thankfully, I was never like, I don't know about that. You know, it's like everything was like, no, every time I listened to it, I was digging what I heard, and I felt really good about it. So that obviously I had to feel good about it to put it out there.
Well, it's pretty cool too. I mean, like you said, first time in your career releasing 2 albums of new music within, you know, in less than 12 months. Like considering all that you've done, all the albums you've released, all the tours you've played, everything, to still be able to like check things off of a list of things you've never done. That's got to be a pretty great feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's just always trying to figure out how to do something different, do something new, just to keep it interesting both for myself and for the fans. And, you know, also it's like, man, if I'd have put them both out at the same time, then that's 16 songs, you know, that you're giving to people. And just to be honest, there's so much that is competing for our attention nowadays that I think it's a really high expectation to think that somebody's going to be able to sit down and listen to a 16-song album from start to finish. But, you know, 2 8-song albums is much more doable. Like somebody could put that on and listen to it, you know, in their morning commute on the way to work and possibly hear the whole album in its entirety. And that's the goal, because I make records, you know, I don't make songs. Right. I make albums, you know, and the goal is that, you know, the record takes you on a journey. It gives you an experience, a musical experience, and that people will listen to it from start to finish. At least once.
Yeah, well, and you've been making records for a while. You released your debut album in '95. Obviously, the industry has changed, and like you said too, so much is vying for attention these days. So, you know, the world has changed over those 3 decades. But for you as the artist, for you as the guy putting these albums out, do you still get similar feelings when you release an album now as you did in '95?
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, yes. I mean, because it's something we worked really hard on. It's something that we created from nothing. Like when you go start writing songs for records, you start with nothing, and then you hopefully come out with something that you're proud of. So all those things, it's like, you know, yes, we worked hard on it. We're proud of it. You were anxious to see how if the fans like it as much as we do, right? But then it's different. It's still different because, you know, back in the day, you used to be able to put a record out and you would wait. You would anxiously wait to see what the first week's sales would be, how many how many radio stations were going to add the single to their playlist and, you know, watch your song go up the charts and stuff. And a lot of that stuff, especially for artists that are labeled in the blues category, you know, that not a lot of that stuff exists anymore.
Yeah, well, we love celebrating you every chance we get, man. I gotta ask, you know, talking about that debut album, Ledbetter Heights, next year it turns 30 years old. What runs through your head when you hear that?
Well, I'm really still proud of every album that I've made. I mean, it's a snapshot in time of who I was in that moment as an artist, and I'm proud to say that like I never allowed myself to like be forced into recording or writing a song that I didn't like or feel passionate about. So as a result, I'm not embarrassed of any of the records that I've made. And I also wasn't ever trying to be a pop star, so it's not like my music was chasing a trend that is no longer popular anymore. It's like I chose to make what I believe is timeless music and music that people hopefully would be listening to for 30 or 40 years after it had come out or even longer. And thankfully that's been the case because, you know, we're coming up, like you said, on the 30th anniversary of my debut record. And to celebrate that, at the end of next year, we're going to be releasing a new version of that album where we went in the studio and re-recorded it. And it's going to sound different. I mean, it's not going to, some songs will sound similar. Some songs we kind of reimagined them, if you will. And then, but no matter what, it's like, you know, I had a different singer on my first album than all the other records. And so there's going to be different vocalists, different musicians on this version. So it's going to sound different no matter what. So we took some liberties, but I'm excited to put that out there. And we'll launch a tour. We'll do a 30th anniversary tour for that record and play that album in its entirety.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing that. And yeah, you're right. Like the type of music that you've created is certainly timeless. And, you know, you've always tapped into that, the history of rock and roll, and you've embodied that in the way you play and the music you make. So I know that there's a big part of you that loves looking back, that loves reflecting on that history, on that timeless music. As an individual, do you enjoy looking back on your career or milestones like a 30th anniversary?
Yeah, well, really, when we did the 25th anniversary of the Trouble Is record a couple of years ago, that's when I really just started taking a retrospective look at things, and you start going, wow, man, you know, look, this is pretty incredible. This is not normal. Like, my career experience and trajectory is just not normal. You know, I signed a record deal at age 16. I recorded my album at age 17, graduated high school. The album came out, sold 500,000 copies really fast. Top 5 rock song, for my first single. Album ended up going platinum. Second record comes out, does even better, and it's like, you know, it built the foundation of a multi-decade long career that's still thriving. And every night that we go on stage, we're still reaching new people. You know, we have fans that have been listening to us for decades and have been seeing us play for decades, and then we have people who are still experiencing our music for the very first time, and that's why we're still making new music. And I think we're doing some of the best music we've ever done today, for sure.
I love hearing that, man. Well, right now you're on the Experience Hendrix tour, and I don't know how many years this has been going on, but one of the greatest concerts of my life was catching this tour many, many years ago. And obviously one of the big reasons why it was such a good night was because of the music, but for me personally, it was so special because I got to take my dad to the show. And so he was sharing stories about growing up, buying Hendrix's records, all of that. There's something unique about what you and the other artists on this bill put together every night as you honor the legacy of Hendrix. I love seeing it, man.
Yeah, it's a really great tour. I mean, it's an amazing amount of talent that crosses that stage every night. Just incredible guitar players, you know, Zakk Wylde from Ozzy Osbourne and Black Label Society, and you have Eric Johnson, who's a guitar phenom, and Dweezil Zappa, the son of Frank Zappa, is an incredible guitar player. We've got some young up-and-comers that are really blazing some trails for themselves. Chris Stone, Kingfish Ingram. We had Samantha Fish early in the tour. Ali Venable is going to be joining us here in a couple days. You know, we had Taj Mahal, who's a living legend, on the first half of the tour. I mean, just like incredible musicians paying tribute to Jimi Hendrix, obviously, who influenced all of us. And it's always just been such a fun tour.
Yeah, and I love hearing that lineup because I was thinking about that. Just, you've got these relatively younger artists, you know, I mean, the incredible Kingfish, who you mentioned, and Samantha Fish, who's just amazing. And we love Aaron Jones on this show. And to see him, you know, be part of some of the shows is really cool too, especially because, you know, he grew up in Seattle and Hendrix was such an influence to him as a kid and now as an artist. And then, Zakk and Eric and Taj and just on and on. In all of the years of doing this tour, is there an artist or a guitarist that you think would be a great fit who hasn't participated before?
You know, I'm sure there's a number of them, right? now that you put me on the spot, can I think of one? I don't know. But there's a lot of really talented players out there, and just about every guitar player has been influenced by Hendrix to some degree or another. Yeah. And I think, they've been looking for that, looking, at like who's doing it and doing it well out there that hasn't been part of the tour, and can we bring them in? And that's why you see people like Aaron and Kingfish and Samantha Fish and others joining the tour this year.
Yeah, and it is special because, so many people, you, me, so many never got to see Hendrix play. And so to be able to see his legacy embodied on stage by so many talented artists and musicians, it really is a unique night of live music.
It is. If you're a fan of guitar or rock and roll or Jimi Hendrix, then it's a show that is not to be missed. And so, this tour, we're kind of on the back end of the tour now. Yeah. Going through, we're in Texas, we're going through Oklahoma, and we're going to Louisiana, Tennessee, Georgia, and then Florida, assuming that all the Florida dates are still happening. And then I think that they're booking the tour sometime next spring, I think in March. So, if you happen to miss it on this run, then look for it next year.
I know Hendrix was a big part of your childhood growing up, playing the guitar. And I'm curious, what's one of your favorite riffs from Hendrix? Not talking about a full song or anything like that, but just that riff that no matter how many times you hear it or you play it, it always strikes something deep inside of you.
Oh, straight up. The opening lick to Voodoo Child's Slight Return, without a doubt. With that wah-wah pedal, man, and everything, it's like, that is just, it's crazy. It's mind-blowing.
I love that, man. Yeah. I'm a wannabe guitarist. I've been playing for many years, and I never took any lessons, except there was just one moment during college where I thought, you know what, I'll take some lessons. And for a few months I did. And my teacher was a huge Hendrix fan and kind of a student of Hendrix. And so that's what he kind of taught me, was like trying to figure out how Hendrix did this and, the quote unquote theory behind it and all of that. And man, like those licks, those riffs, whatever song it is, there's just nothing like it.
Yeah, he was incredibly innovative. Especially if you consider the technology or the lack of technology that was available to him back then. I mean, multi-track recording wasn't even that old at that point. I think, he had like 3 pedals, effects pedals for his rig, because like that's basically every pedal that was available at the time. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's just amazing all the ideas and the sounds that he was able to create with such limited resources, and that's why he was just an incredibly innovative musician.
And he had huge fingers, right? Like as I kind of got deeper into it, I'm just like, man, he could do so much on that guitar.
Yeah, he absolutely could. He made that thing sound like nobody else, for sure.
So it sounds like you've already got a lot of plans for next year with the 30th anniversary of Ledbetter Heights. And the Experience tour, maybe taking shape for the spring. What else is on the horizon for you, man?
Well, I got a blues album that I recorded with a living legend by the name of Bobby Rush, and awesome. He's incredible. And so we went into the studio, and I produced a record on him and played guitar on it, and it's just me and him doing just straight up, authentic, real deal blues music, and that's going to come out sometime next year as well. We don't know the release date yet. But the album is done, and then we're looking at doing some dates where we perform together so that we can support that record as well. So there's lots of stuff on the horizon for sure.
Amazing, man. Always staying busy. Kenny Wayne Shepherd, I got to say it's a sincere honor to get to share some time and space with you tonight. I know we're just scratching the surface, but thank you so much for hanging and for the time. Listeners can grab your new album, Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 2, and get the remaining dates for the Experience Hendrix Tour. Stay caught up on everything going on in your world at KennyWayneShepherd.com. I know you've got to run, but you're welcome back anytime, brother. Hopefully we can hang again soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.